Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the Culture Books podcast. This is episode 15. It's being recorded on the 28th of January, 2024. My name is John, and I'm joined by my regular co-host,
Sheridan.
Hey, and we are doing Ian M. Banks's book, Use of Weapons. Hopefully you've been along for the ride. If not, go back to episode 1, buy a copy of the book. Talk to us when you catch up. Thank you to everyone who has caught up and has let us know on Twitter, and we apologise for the slovenly pace at which we're proceeding. But moving on, Sheridan, what do we do now?
So now what we do is you have 30 seconds to recount what's happened in the book thus far.
Now, I think I forgot to mention is chapter VII 7, not to be confused with SEVN 7, which was last episode.
Or SEVEN even.
Well, that too. Someone's strict on their spelling. All right, so hang on. So I have some time in which to recap what's happening in the book, yep?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, and when does that start?
When I count you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
So there are two timelines. One is going backwards, exploring the dark past of Sheridan and Zakalwe. The other one is going forward in time, where Sheridan and Zakalwe travels across the galaxy to try and catch up with his friend and avert a war, and is becoming involved in James Bond-style shenanigans against carbon fascists, who would be just regular politicians in our world. And that's where I've got. Yay!
I feel like you're truncating that down a little.
Well, you got to at the end of the book, don't you? You've got to cut everything out. Okay, and now you have the infinitely harder task of summarising just what happened in this chapter, VII. So this is a backwards in time chapter. We are going deeper than ever into Sheridan and Zakalwe's past. Sheridan, your time starts in 3, 2, 1.
Zakalwe's having the worst day of his life that's basically culminating in him writing "Help Me" in bird crap. And while he's doing this, he is having a lot of flashbacks, and we find out that Livuetta is the sister. It's the sister. But the bit of the scar in his heart isn't from her, it's from another sister that you find out all about in the chapter. Turns out they're kind of privileged, like little douchebags. But anyway, there's a kind of stepbrother who's evil. I thought I was going to do so good there.
Sheridan, tell us what you think about the stepbrother. Everyone wants to know.
Well, he's evil.
You think he's evil?
Well, he's banging the sister. He walks in on...
What's wrong with consensual banging?
But she's crying. I don't think it's consensual.
There's a lot of crying and sex at that age.
It does not sound good.
So you don't think it's consensual, because that is quite a point of debate in the fandom.
Ah, okay. Well, I actually wanted to discuss that when we got to that section of the book.
Okay, all right. Do you want to hold on for that, or...
Oh, we could do it. What would you prefer?
Just a quick point. How does the audiobook pronounce elithiomal?
Okay, and I knew you were going to ask me this, and I actually have to look at it while I have to read the word.
Yep.
So hang on, just let me find a page.
This is fascinating audio.
Elithiomal.
Okay, it's slightly different to what I had in my head, but that's fine. So it opens, as is customary of Banks in general, this book in particular. And I was thinking about it, these really jumpy entries are actually really handy, because if he didn't do it this way, reacquainting you with the whole story of this timeline would get really tiresome, because it'd be every chapter you'd be doing recapitulation. So instead he just throws in the water.
Yeah. This one wasn't too bad.
What, he told the rock, I've got this really nasty feeling that I'm dying?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It was awful.
It took me at least half the chapter to even figure out where he was and what he was doing.
Yeah, but you at least know he's having flashbacks.
Yes, it makes that clear that he's having flashbacks. Which is, the flashbacks are a real cheat to the narrative structure, because, people go, oh, well, one timeline goes forward and one timeline goes backward. So this is going back a few years, but then it's got a flashback within it that's going back literally to the early childhood of the characters. But it's not in the reverse timeline going all the way back. Yeah. We've got other later chapters to take us back into that part of the world. Yes, okay. So we start with the start of... Now, I love how you stole my line about him having his worst ever day.
Well, it's hardly a unique line.
I literally said it to you half an hour ago and you just rolled with it. Okay, yes. And for a guy who's had his head cut off, it's really saying something that this day is worse.
Well, you know, the sort of raping in the mud is probably where it sort of descended into rubbish day.
Oh, the bends is, for mine, probably the worst thing. It's fine. You don't hear about the bends as much anymore because people have gotten a lot better at regulating diving. But it used to be professional divers just lived in absolute fear of this incredible racking pain. That
people used to get it when they flew too, not commercial flights, but did pilots and stuff used to get it?
I don't think so, because you have to be under pressure for the nitrogen to force itself into your blood.
It seems like it was a much more common problem.
Yes, although if you're going to let a giant rock carry you to the bottom of a lake, I guess it's more of a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, with our jumping in, so we've got this line. He tried to crawl away unobtrusively. He could see what was coming next. His life was going to flash before him. What an appalling thought. And in this flashback, just for my own edification, there is a line. He remembered a tank battle in the great monocultural fields like seas of grass, all madness and submerged desperation, and commanders standing on the tanks and areas of burning crop, slowly spreading, burning through the night, spreading darkness ringed by fire. The cultivated grassland was the reason for and prize for that war and was destroyed by it. So I like that. And then we get, and a garden. He remembered the garden and a chair. And then he keeps having this conversation with the sky, which I really love because the sky does seem to be a participant in the conversation.
I thought that was just like a bit of a reference to him trying to sort of will the culture down to rescue him.
There is that. And
also, I love the description of the culture ship, which is very Trumpian. A big, beautiful ship.
The biggest, most beautiful you've ever seen, folks.
It just is like... I feel like that phrase is taken on it.
I mean, if you're crawling around in bird poo with your ligaments cut and whatever's happening with your bum after being raped, and the bends, it's tough. He's having a tough time.
He's still got time to apologise to the insects, though, which he does multiple times in the chapter.
Well, the insects are really his only friends.
Yeah.
Then the question, what was so terrible about a chair anyway? Anyway, I mean, there's been a lot of chair references through this book.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I'm not expecting you to have the answer to that question, Sharon.
No, I was thinking, hang on. Well, I mean, except, he's raping his sister on the chair?
Is he?
Or was the chair just in the corner?
I mean, he was having sex with his sister on the chair.
Yeah. Okay, we're going back to the first conversation.
Sure.
We'll get there, I guess.
Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to that. And then, so we get this flashback to this. It reminded me there was a whole genre of British books about rich kids in the mid-20th century. Famous Five, and obviously The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And the one that really struck me this was The Children of the New Forest, which was about a bunch of Cavalier children having to survive when Daddy gets taken away by the Roundheads. Quite pertinent to what's going on here in a lot of ways, I think. But it, definitely. Rich children in the big house and their adventures, and a touch of Downton Abbey, I guess, as well. But I guess, what did you make of our rich little children in their beautiful house with its wonderful play areas?
Well, I got to say, I was sort of a bit surprised.
What, you thought Zakalwe came from the wrong side of the tracks? He's an obvious private school boy.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, he thinks he can get away with anything.
Yeah, I don't know. It was sort of a little surprising to me.
And the way he's always been raised to think that opportunity constantly surrounds him. You don't get raised that way lower class.
True. And I mean, I guess him not being as good as the stepbrother at anything is kind of, he's clearly got something to prove.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
But what do you tell me what your take on the stepbrother is, or the foster brother, or whatever you'd want to call the situation.
Yeah.
Who's the dad? What's the go there? It's very unclear.
Well, I mean, that's part of the understated storytelling. And I mean, music videos were starting to appear around this time, which were a very truncated form of storytelling. And I feel that Banks is diving into that, although short stories have always, been a thing in literature. But so there's a lot of compressed storytelling going in here, and things suggested and left to your imagination.
Well, it doesn't really make sense why she's there. Like, it's not explained.
Oh, we'll go through that as we get to it. So it's introduced. Once there had been a great house which stood in an estate bordered on three sides by a broad river, midway between the mountains and the sea. The grounds were full of old woods and well-grazed pasture land. There were rolling hills full of shy, wild animals, and winding paths, and winding streams crossed by little bridges. There were follies and pergolas and ha-has, ornamental lakes, and quiet rustic summer houses. I mean, it sounds like a beautiful estate.
Yeah, it's clearly nice. And they have two, houses. Like, they go into the city in this winter.
They've got a city house, yeah. Well, they're very important people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this idea, over the years and the generations, many children were born and brought up in the great house and played in the wonderful gardens that surround it. This is all very, very Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, isn't it? And I suspect deliberately so. So then the description, 2 of the children were sisters called Darkence and Livuetta. One of the boys was their elder brother called Sheradanine, and they all shared the family name, Zakalwe. The last child was not related to them, but came from a family that had long been allied to theirs. He was called Elathiamel. Okay, so...
That's all it says, though. It's the only statement.
So Elathiamel's family have been allied to the Zakalwe family in whatever the politics of this place are.
Not on the great side, though, because it seems like the king assassinates the dad.
Well, executes.
Or executes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'd want him in your house, would you?
Well, I think that's part of... this is kind of how awesome the dad is. The dad is an incredibly impressive figure through this chapter.
But you never really see him or hear from him.
You hear from him. I mean...
His presence is there.
Just in this... I mean, just a really compressed piece of storytelling. The next, line is, the troop of royal cavalry came to the house a week later, and he remembered his father out on the broad steps leading down into the courtyard, talking calmly, his own men running quietly through the house, taking up positions at every window. So, you've got this sense of the master of the house going out to tell the royal horse that they're going to leave, while his men are getting ready to shoot them if they don't. It's, a tense scene. I found... I mean, I thought he was written this way. The father was a very impressive figure who sort of created something for Zakalwe to try and live up to. And obviously a big player in the politics here, as well as commanding a lot of loyalty from everyone around him. And then, now you think Elathiamel's evil. There is this line here, for a few years he could torment the younger boy, but then Elathiamel, who grew faster than he did, started to retaliate, and an uneasy truce developed between the two boys. It sounds like Zakalwe's a bit mean, doesn't it?
Well, that's what I initially thought. I was like, oh, wow, he's a real little douchebag.
Yeah.
But, the raping and the kind of... He's also a bit of a douche at the...
Let's take all that now. If it was rape, surely Zakalwe with the gun in his hand would have intervened.
He comes back and shoots the house down with a tank.
But he doesn't do anything at the time when he's got a gun in his hand. So he doesn't think it's non-consensual.
But maybe he doesn't want to kill his brother.
He probably wants his sister not to be raped, though.
If the whole thing was very disappointing, why he doesn't intervene? I mean, she could even be disabled at this point. She's got that bung hip from when it was shot.
Yeah.
The whole thing's very, very sad.
Okay. All right. Then we get the description of Elathiamel's mother was always quieter when they went to the city and cried more often and went away for a few days every so often, all excited before she went and sobbing when she returned. Which, again, is, you could have written pages and pages of her going to visit the dad in the prison, but that just covers it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, right.
And then we get a jump to your mate Sheradanine torturing the poor boy. Your father was a murderer. Yeah. They put him to death because he killed lots of people. And then if he was good, why did the king have him killed? I don't know. People must have told tales about him, told lies. But the king's clever. cleverer than anybody. That's why he's king. He'd know if they were telling lies.
Well, given his upbringing, though, with the father who seems to be a bit of a Republican, for lack of a better word.
What do you say Republican? You think he's against the king?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's guaranteed.
Well, isn't that so the royal troops come the night that Elithimel's going to be born?
Because they wanted to take Elithimel's mother away.
Yeah, so they clearly don't.
I don't think he's necessarily nailed his colours to the wall, but he's sold to the mast. I'm sorry. But, you know, he told the royal troops to go away, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily anti-royal. I think the politics are more complex than that.
Okay.
Poor Elithiel saying, my father wasn't a bad man. And then Zakalwe, he was, and your mother must have been extremely naughty too, or they wouldn't have made her stay in her room all this time.
Oh no, he's a real little douchebag.
Which is...
And then come the girls, look, we're making perfume! I don't think that's going to distract them.
Yeah. Come on, you want to help us gather flowers? Yep, and then poor Zakalwe getting knocked out, getting pushed off the... I thought he had it coming. He'd pushed his brother.
He did seem to have it coming at that point, I will agree. Yeah. The throwing of all the stones on top of him while he lay drowning, I felt was stretched too far.
Right. Okay. All right, and then we get a little bit more of Zakalwe in Torture World. Then there were the names that he'd used, pretend names that didn't really belong to him. Imagine calling himself after a ship. What a silly person, what a naughty boy. That was what he was trying to forget. He didn't know, he didn't understand how he could have been so stupid. Now it all seemed so clear, so obvious. He wanted to forget about the ship. He wanted to bury the thing, so he shouldn't go calling himself after it. Now he realised. Now he understood. Now when it was too late to do anything about it. He made himself want to be sick. A chair, a ship, something else he forgot.
What is it?
You have to keep reading, I guess.
It's not revealed in this chapter, is it? Okay. It's like, is there something I missed?
I did love the line where the dad's telling the boys they have to learn how to do useful things. And they're like, but I don't want to be a carpenter. And he's like, just because you know carpentry doesn't make you a carpenter.
Do you think he's foreseeing a world, though, where they...
I think he's more thinking it's part of a good education.
Right, well, that's what I initially thought, but now I'm starting to question it.
Poor Livuetta doesn't get to do metal work. I thought that was a bit mean.
Well, we wouldn't have the chair if she'd pursued that.
Oh, you think that's the chair? Okay.
The little chair that she made?
Yeah.
Well, that has to be the chair. There's more than one chair.
You think Livuetta's the chair maker?
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's interesting.
But that's this freaking chair is like coming up over and over, and then we find out
I think we've established there's more than one chair.
Yeah, but I thought this was the chair that started it all.
Okay. Cool. Interesting.
Multiple chairs? What the hell is this obsession with chairs? Well, I just thought this was like a Rosebud situation from Orson Welles'
Citizen Kane.
Yeah. Like,
Right.
you know, it's like the little Rosebud sled.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought this was that's what this little chair was.
There's some of that.
Oh, no, there's more chairs. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for them.
Okay. Then flicking back to Zakalwe dying. And he was a man, wasn't he, children? And he was a nice man. And he was dying on the little island. And scream, he said. Doubtfully, the sky looked down. It was blue. I do like the idea, and they're going to explore this further in the book, of basically the culture is the sky because they're always looking down from orbit.
So I was right with my earlier observation.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. Chair wrong. Mm-hmm. Culture sky right.
Well, you weren't chair wrong. You just limited in your view because you haven't read the rest of the book yet.
True.
So, yeah. I like the ring pulls. I'm leaving that in.
Really?
Yeah, you should hold it up and really crack it in there. Okay, going back to the children, I did love, with the sense of just the foolishness of young men, Talking about the trees. All this waste every autumn. A tree that kept its leaves wouldn't have to grow new ones. It would grow bigger than all the rest. It would be the king of the trees. And, of course, trees in cold climates drop their leaves so they don't have to waste energy maintaining them. So there's a reason for it. But, young boys like to think they figured everything out and they know why everyone's wrong. And I thought that was...
I thought that was funny too.
And poor Dark Ants being like, but the leaves are beautiful.
Yeah.
Which is actually a more insightful thing than anything the boys are saying.
Yeah.
Then we find out why exactly he's in this whatever predicament he's in. He'd been on a stolen mount, skirting the edge of a water-filled volcanic crater when the robbers struck. They'd beaten him and raped him and cut the tendons in his legs and tossed him into the stinking yellow-tinged waters of the crater lake, then thrown boulders at him as he tried to swim away using only his arms, his legs floating uselessly behind him. And then it describes how he also gets the bends.
What happens when your tendons are severed? Don't you just go all limp?
In those bits of your body, yeah.
Yeah. So how is he walking around?
He's not. He's crawling around on his elbows.
Yeah, but I thought that was just... I guess that... Oh, yeah, okay.
He's having a really bad day.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
And then this line that you referenced before. They would come for him. The culture would come down with a beautiful big ship and they would take him up and make it all better. He was sure they would. He'd be looked after and made better, and he'd be safe, very safe, and well looked after and free from pain. Back in their paradise, it would be like being a child again, like being in the garden again. Except some rogue part of his mind reminded him, bad things happen in gardens too, sometimes.
Is that a reference to what happens next with the shooting, or is that another?
I think it's more general, but obviously angled specifically at things in this chapter, given that we're going back to the garden. And then, the kids stealing the gun, which is, just a...
It's such a kid's plan.
Yeah. Not thought out at all. Just like, we'll get the gun and then we'll go shoot it. And I love even the girls like, yeah, we want to get the gun. And then they're like, oh, what does this mean?
Then they can barely lift it.
Yeah. And classic young boys, you know, like, oh, you should have got more magazines. I couldn't see more magazines. Well, you're just dumb. And,
It's got a silencer. Doesn't.
I thought it did. Yeah,
well, fine. Don't they, when they do the shootout, they're like, take the silencer off. And they can't work it out. And then they just start shooting it. And it's just like shooting everywhere and doesn't seem to have a silencer.
Oh, it might still have had a silencer.
Oh.
But removing a silencer is not trivial.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're in a combat situation and you're only a child.
Yes.
Then another case of Sharadnine being mean to Elethiamel over the gun. It's not yours, it's ours. It belongs to our family, not yours. I know so many children who are horrible to each other in exactly that sort of way.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Now, what do you think about Dark Ants getting shot?
What do you mean? Sad.
Okay.
Sounds bad. Sounds like they really got her a good one.
What's this kid doing with an explosive pelvis?
I also like how they're like, the war hadn't started, so the army doctors were able to put a lot of attention on her because she came from an important family, implying that if it had been like 4 months down the track or 6 or whatever,
in the hospitals.
She would have just been like stuffed. But that's so... That bit where they said the piece of bone goes into his chest, because that's clearly the scar on his chest.
That's the piece of the princess he carried with him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. And it's like it says the doctor said that he'd rejected and he never did. I mean, it's so lovely.
Until he lost his body and the culture grew him a new one that didn't have a piece of bone in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd almost be asking for a returns policy on that, wouldn't you? It's like, just go get the bone. Sure. Okay. So when we get to the end of this book, we're going to have to come back and talk about how this is framed. But at the moment, we just need to keep going. So then finally, they came for him. They came down with a big, beautiful ship and they took him up away and they made it all better again. They never learned, the sky sighed quite distinctly. Fuck you, he said. I did love funny. You've been talking to the sky all this time. Finally, the sky starts talking back. just struck me as a very, I mean, you know, again, this book's full of trauma scenes, and this is another one, I guess. Then we get to the sex scene. Now, I had a lot of trouble creating a cover image for this episode because artificial intelligence hates doing violence and hates doing anything sexual.
Which, given today's news with Taylor Swift being AI pornoed all over the internet.
Yeah, I'm like, they're not using DALL-E or Midjourney for that, I can tell you.
We can understand why. I mean, it seems like a good idea to not make that happen.
I do think with the Taylor Swift thing, it's no different from photoshopping 10 years ago. It's no different from what people used to draw nasty pictures and put them in pamphlets of famous women. It's not pleasant, but I don't think it's a technological apocalypse.
I think we might be getting off topic here, but
well, talking about the impact of artificial intelligence.
But
yeah,
I will accept Photoshop could be very good, but there were ways to tell whether it was fake, and that there's not so many ways to tell that this is fake.
Yeah, except if it's a picture of a naked Taylor Swift, it's fake. She's not putting that out there.
Well, yes, but
she doesn't need to run an OnlyFans.
Anyway, let's get back onto the topic.
Okay, all right. So, is there a bit of this that you've got, Mark, to read up? I can see why people question whether this was consensual sex.
So it says he goes back to try and find her. Mm-hmm. He hears a scream. Mm-hmm. Darkens. He dashes up the stairs.
Drawing his pistol, kicked the door open.
Darkens' startled face twisted over her shoulder regarding him. Mm-hmm. Her hands were still clasped around Elithiumol's neck. Mm-hmm. Elithiumol sat, trousers around his ankles, hands on Darkens' naked hips under her bunched-up dress, and looked calmly at him. Mm-hmm. Elithiumol was sitting on the little chair that Livuetta had made in her carpentry class. Mm-hmm. Hi there, old chap. Yep. Now, look, it is difficult to tell whether that's consensual, but the next bit says Sharadamneen looked into Elithiumol's eyes for a moment, then turned away, holstering the pistol and buttoning the holster and walking out, closing the door behind him. Behind him, he heard Darkens crying and Elithiumol laughing.
Yeah.
Even if it's consensual, it ain't a good relationship, is it?
No.
Her brother returns and he's like just having a laugh while she's crying.
When young people get caught having sex, you know, it's all awkward and weird. And being caught having sex is something that only happens to young people because, you know, when we get older, we've got our own
You
houses.
don't even know how old they are here, though.
Oh, well, we know
He's been away it was years later.
Yeah, he's come back from the military academy, so he's 18 to 21. And they're a few years younger than him.
But it sounds like they're just living in the house without the parents.
Well, they're in the summer house.
I don't know. Anyway, what does the fandom say?
Oh, I don't know. And I think it's written to make it ambiguous. But I guess for me, the textual evidence is one, she's on top, which is not impossible, but not that usual for rape situations.
Well, look.
But my other point...
Let's not go there, but yeah.
My other point from a textual point of view is simply that if Sharadameen had thought it was a rape, he's got a gun in his hand, it's his sister, it would be normal in that situation for him to at least punch the crap out of Elithiumol. Instead, he's like, oh, Jesus, I've interrupted these two boning. But I can see how people could draw a different conclusion.
There's at least a question mark about the relationship.
There are huge question marks. It's written to give us huge question marks. Yes, I totally agree. But my personal lean is that the scene is more a consensual sex has been interrupted. And, you know, people, particularly when they're young, have a lot of emotional tension around sex. In fact, people have it when they're old too. Yes, and then we finally get it explained what the hell Zakalwe was doing crawling around in the bird poo. Saying it was the local signal for help me and you would only have seen it from an aircraft or from space.
Smart.
Because the culture rules the sky. And then the finale, which does round out the scene in that the war has come. There was, all through the book, there was this sense that things were getting worse and worse outside of the big house. I mean, they literally had assassins roaming the grounds. And then it's years later, or a few years after the scene in the summer house, while the forest burned and the distant artillery thundered, a young army major jumped up onto one of the tanks under his command and ordered the driver to take the machine through the woods, following a path which wound between the old trees. Inside the summer house, the little wooden chair was quite visible. The tank's gun was pointing straight at the small building. "Sir," the tank commander said, peering worriedly from the hatch beneath. Major Zakalwe looked down at him. "Fire," he said.
See, I think that you have to read that in one of two ways.
Sure.
And when you're reading it straight through it the first time, the fact that he shoots up the house implies that something that he was really, really bad happened there.
Yeah. Or something that really upset him.
Yes. And given that it's straight after that sex scene, it kind of implies that that's what it's about. But given the back and forthiness of the narrative, are we meant to be like waiting for some other negative experience?
Yes, we're definitely waiting for another negative experience.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Whew, yeah.
I mean, we still haven't gotten to the whole bottom of what happened with Livuetta, which is obviously still lurking there in the background.
Why Livuetta's... Well, she might be angry because he raped her sister.
Maybe. Well, but Zakalwe didn't rape her sister and Livuetta hates Zakalwe.
Gotcha. Yep. Yes. Anyway, sorry, there might be some other childhood event that we're going to find out about.
Well, I mean, it is implied through the chapter because there is a couple of points where he's like, no, not that. Don't take me back to that.
Yes, true. Now, did you have a favourite character in this one?
Ooh, that's a toughie, actually. That is a toughie because those little kids are kind of douchebags. Oh, well, let's go with the sister.
Which one?
Oh, God, sorry. I've just totally blanked on a name.
Darkins?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Darkle? I did like Darkle as a...
I like Darkle too.
Yeah. So Darkle's your... And what was it about Darkle that made
her hips exploding into people? She just deserves a bit of
an explosive pelvis.
Possible rape. She deserves a little win.
Okay, a little W.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else was in that chapter you want to talk about? How do you feel about Zakalwe now that you basically had the origin story?
Well, I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know, it's lost appeal a little bit. It's a little bit entitled.
Anything else?
That's all I've got.
Okay. And you think Elithiamel's a baddie?
Well, he's come from a troubled background.
Troubled privilege, but...
Yeah.
Okay. And do you think we're going to meet him again?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you think that's going to go?
Not good.
In any particular ways?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. I think we're done for this week then. So thank you folks so much for listening. We really do appreciate our little band of listeners enormously. And we'll be back as soon as Sheridan reads the next chapter. So, all right. See you folks.
Bye.